Hi, Devnexus. Welcome to my session about monitoring distributed Java applications at scale. I'm Anna, and I'm honored to be here with you the third year in a row at Devnexus. Hope you'll enjoy my presentation. A little bit about myself. I started as a Java developer, and I'm still Java at core, but I also like to entangle the mysteries of Kubernetes, and I have certified the second passion of mine with OpenShift and Linux Foundation certifications. I'm also sharing some of my experiences within the Bucharest software craftsmanship community, which is co-founded together with Victor Rente. In today's session, you're going to hear a lot about application monitoring, obviously, but application monitoring is important mainly for us, the developers, DevOps engineers, architects, each of one of us who's working with an application, because it gives information on how to troubleshoot things. It gives us information on how to fix things, firstly. Secondly, application monitoring involves having certain metrics, having an overview of what's going on in your application so that you can further improve your application. And if you're improving your application from using the information that you get from monitoring, you are improving actually the end user experience of your application users. In the end, application monitoring is something that benefits not just those that work at that application of making those features in an application, but it benefits also your end users. How to achieve application monitoring for distributed systems? When we're talking about distributed systems, of course, most of you must be thinking at microservices, and you're right. Microservices nowadays, they have their advantages and disadvantages, but most of the time they come with a certain complexity. And this complexity, it needs to be monitored. You need to know, you have to have a big picture of what's going on across your microservices architecture, regardless of your role, because you are impacted by the interconnection and how those are orchestrated in the behavior that is being given to the user, right? And you need to see what's going on at that big level with your system by using application monitoring. So most of the time, application monitoring for microservices is something you associate it as having a big picture of what's going on in your system by using tools. And there is a wide variety of tools existing nowadays, proprietary tools or open source tools. And those are there to help you. And they need to be sometimes interconnected so that they can give you the right information about your system and to know what to fix and what to improve, actually. And in today's presentation, my suggestion for you, my personal opinion, is to start with using Jaeger, Prometheus, and Grafana. Yes, some of you are going to say, yes, so many tools or so few tools. You will see in my presentation the importance of each of them. Of course, you can choose to use less. But when you start using one of them, you'll see that you need a little bit extra so that you can get more information and improve more. And for you today, I designed an application. Of course, it's not a very, very large-scale application, but is enough to prove a point. So I designed for you an application comprised of 5 mini applications that have the purpose to fulfill an online order for tickets. So a visitor can order online a ticket for an event or for an itinerary. Itineraries have associated with them landmarks. So you can order online tickets to enter to a place, or you can order online tickets for an event. And of course, all this time, as a user, your identity is being retrieved from this visitor microservice. Now, this is the developer view. Let's put in a bucket our microservices here. So let's put them here and look to them from exterior and see what we need in order to have a good monitoring setup, what we need to do in order to observe them. So like any good developer at my application level, I have logged those exceptional cases. So I have logs, and those logs can be further used by my monitoring setup by pushing them to a service like Grafana Loki. And furthermore, those logs can be queried in Grafana. You can also, you need to know, of course, what's going on at application level, at each application level. But you need to know what's happening between applications as well. So this is why you're pushing tracing data to Jaeger. And by pushing tracing data to Jaeger, you establish the connection of data and where the data is going through your system. Last but not least, you need to know how well your system is performing. So you're pulling metrics from Prometheus. And these metrics can be later queried within Grafana, where you can see logs and metrics and traces and all of these goodies. And because I wanted to, get some information about tracing and get some metrics about tracing, I pull some tracing metrics in Prometheus and I query them via Grafana as well in the example today. No worries, the code from today is going to be supplied to you as well as the Grafana dashboard and everything that I've done. And if you wonder how I did the setup for the tools, I just simply followed the guidelines from their documentation, and I've used mostly operators to set them up. Now, this is the real-life use case for our application. So alert, no order for itineraries is successful. So no order of any itinerary ticket goes with success. Let's see what happened. So first of all, I'll go to here to generate some orders and see what's going on. So we see that I'm calling some actions. So refund seems to work okay, but itinerary doesn't seem to work okay. So I'll leave this to work here and generate some random data for me. And if you think like, hey, but what if this happens to me in production level in real life? I cannot just go and generate random data in production. Well, typically what you do in production, you have like an agreement with the systems that you're working with, systems of records that you're working with, so that you can introduce some test data. This data is going to be ignored with further processing, but it's going to do enough work for you to smoke test things. Okay, I think I've had enough. And the first place that I want to go is in Jaeger. And because it says no order is working, so I'm just going to go in Jaeger. And I'm on order and see some traces here. So I can see that I have some errors. But I want to filter a little bit more. So I'm going to use the tags feature of Jaeger. And I'm going to set here error equals true, which Jaeger is inviting me to use. So I see that a few seconds ago I got some errors from Jaeger. And this is what happened with my microservice. So on by itinerary, the visitor seems to work okay, but I see a lot more things here. So what this information means? This is actually information that is default combined with information that I set up at code level. What I mean to say is that, for example, in my order microservice at order controller level and by itinerary, there is a default span associated with the by itinerary get. So when I'm invoking a get operation on by itinerary, there's a default span that is being ignited by the system and is being traced. What a span means is that the span is capturing, is tracing for you the event associated with this unit of work of by itinerary. But because by itinerary is actually doing two things, is looking for a visitor, and because it needs to associate data with a visitor, I mean buying an itinerary with a visitor, and it needs to actually do the work and buy the itinerary, it does some complex business operation from my point of view. So this is why I have set up inside it another span called by itinerary. And this is why you see that trace there in Jaeger. And in that by itinerary span, I set my own tag of by itinerary so that I can trace what's going on with my itinerary inside of it, because things might get wrong. And I also made my own metric for transactions. So I'm also annotating for transaction because I want to know how many transactions were done. Maybe I want to do that and I want to see how many transactions were done for my system. Now, let me go here. And look what error was thrown. So there's an error in itinerary. So there's some logs here that can help me. Wow. So I have a null pointer exception. So you see here that there's the by itinerary, but there's an itinerary called here. So this means that this issue occurred at the itinerary level. So my null pointer exception was handled in itinerary controller on get itinerary. So let me scroll through something more meaningful. So get itinerary, and it's being thrown at get random in itinerary service. So in itinerary service, line 61. Let me go in itinerary service, line 61 for just a moment. So itinerary service, I have it open here. Line 61, it says to me that itineraries get something random for, get me a random itinerary from the list of itineraries. Now, if a null has been thrown here, most probably that the itineraries are null. But I want to make sure that the itineraries are null. So how do I do that? Well, something must have happened on init. When I initiated this service, probably something was thrown there. And as you can see here, because I'm doing some more complex operation, because I'm processing a landmark here as well, I've made it another span in this one. So what I did, I created another span called no landmark, and I added a new tag called unavailable landmark. So let me check for the unavailable landmark again in Jaeger, but this time I'm going on itinerary. Let me remove this one. Let me check for the operation here. So I have the no landmark operation, find traces, and I see that 23 minutes ago and 24 minutes ago, this was registered. So I see that no landmark was thrown. Let me get also this one, unavailable landmark, and get me on all, find traces. So then no landmark, unavailable landmark was thrown as well. So this is the span that was captured. So the span was captured there. So this was logged, and an exception was logged on it, but the exception was not logged in here in the span. So I need to go in logger. So what I'll do, I'll go to Grafana, to Loki, and I'm going to go to Explore, and I'm going to Loki, and Loki is going to go here in App. So I'm going to select App. This is my app here, itinerary. Cool. Now Grafana is really working really nice, and I'm just going to do this quick thingy, and I'm just going to say, just get me the errors in Grafana. So let me see what's going on here. These are info, error. Let me see if I get anything else. So something was thrown here. So there is a resource access exception. So there is a get request for landmark, 8080 landmark, the name or service not known. So the name of the service landmark is not known. So what happens is an itinerary is that when I'm trying to get the landmarks from landmark dot to dots 8080 for landmark / landmark, I'm not getting anything. And this is when I'm like talking with my colleague from DevOps, because this with the host seems like DevOps thing. But let me look first here. So it seems that landmark URL is being obtained from the environment. So it's not defined at Spring level at all. It's like I'm expecting it from the environment. In my environment is Kubernetes. So this is when I'm talking with my DevOps colleague and tell about this issue and say, hey, is landmark URL configured correctly in the system? And what he or she is going to do is going to go in the itinerary and is going to see if this is correctly set up. So one way to do this is by doing this quick diff against the setup.yaml, because I need to disclose this to you. For itinerary, the setup is done here in setup.yaml and is being kept in the repo. So it's being kept together with the microservice. So what my colleague can do is do this and see that there are some differences. So I'm just gonna just quickly scroll through the list, because there's a lot of Kubernetes information, but I need to find something with landmark, you know. Okay, look at here. So it seems that on my system I have the landmark.8080 defined, the one that was reported in the logs, but the value that is in the repo itself is landmark minus service. So I don't have the correct definition of my landmark access point. So normally you would go through a pipeline and fix this, or the colleague from DevOps is going to apply this as well. But since we're just a little bit in a hurry, we're going to do a small hack. So we're going to edit directly in the dashboard. Going to go here. And don't worry, Kubernetes records this information as well. So you have this new rollout as well recorded. So now things seem to go okay. Let me go here. So I stopped this error message and see, yeah, it takes a while. Yeah, now it's green. So let me try an order again. Buying event works, buy itinerary works. Wow, this is great. So itinerary works fine. Oh, that's great. That's amazing. I'm just going to leave it for here for a few things to see the itinerary is working fine, because I want to make sure that things are working okay. So seems that I fixed everything. Uh-oh. Wait, doesn't seem that I fixed everything, because I saw 500 error. But the rest worked. Let me wait for more. So the rest of things work. But now there's another 500 error. Okay, something's wrong. Okay, let me go back to Jaeger and get here and see what's going on. So error equals true. Let me check at the itinerary level if something's wrong with itinerary. So there's no problem with itinerary. So again with order, what can be there? So a few seconds ago, there's another problem with the orders. There's an order. There's a problem. There's a log. Let me go here on the logs. So now I have an exception, but this is a different one. It's called failed to find itinerary, but I already set it up and it seemed to work fine. So failed to find itinerary, get itinerary controller line 45, itinerary controller line 35, itinerary controller line 35. Okay, 45. It's this one, but this one is controlled by me as a developer. So this one says that when math.random is bigger than 0.8, which can happen, test flag and the test flag is not enabled, throw this. So when the test flag is disabled, and this is, but of course the test flag is not working, right? I mean, what's this logic here? And this is configured from value. So let me check what I set up in application.yaml. So in application.yaml, I have test flag enabled, being configured from Kubernetes as well, but I give it as a default value false. So if my test flag enabled would be false, then in here, in the controller, it would enter this, this exceptional case if math.random is also bigger than 0.8. So this must be false. Let's check it at Kubernetes level. I'm just going to go here, which I modified it earlier. So environment variables. This is the environment variables part. Jaeger service, Jaeger host, Jaeger sample type, Jaeger landmark URL is fine, but no test flag. Now, since there's no time to, go through all the changes, and probably the developer is going to do changes and fix it, but we want to make the orders work, right? So we're going to define it here. And this value here is going to override the value that you have in here in Spring Boot. So luckily I can do this. I can do the name here. I can put the value, which is true because the default was false, and true is going to disable this weird behavior. And I was going to go through the deployment again and see what's going on. Hopefully things are going to go okay. Now, what I did, because I wanted to see my service error ratio, I have my own dashboard for sample tracing. So this is something for all my microservices. And I have here the container specified. By the container, I actually mean the application itself. And you can see that order has three pods associated to it. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of data here. You can see the span duration, you can see the span count, you can see the errors. Okay, so let me issue some orders. I hope that the service is being fine right now. Okay, let me issue some orders again. And go to Grafana and watch the service error ratio. And let me just go to edit mode of service error ratio. So service error ratio, it has behind it a division of two queries. So I'm checking how many errors are being thrown. So error equals true for a certain container, in this case order. And this is reported to the amount of total spans. So this way I can discover the service error ratio for certain service. In this case is error. And I see that the service error ratio is now 0. But because I don't want to get in this problem again, and I want to be notified about this exceptional case again, I need to set an alert. So I'm going to go here, and I see that I cannot set alert on template variables. It's okay. What I'll do, I'll copy this one here. And sometimes it's good to make your own dashboards when you want to look into detail to a certain service. So I have an order tracing dashboard where I have different things for refund ratio, average event rate over time. So I'm going to copy paste this here. And you see it doesn't work as expected, of course, because it doesn't have the drop down with container. So I'm going to hard code here the order because this is specific to a microservice, that's the order microservice. And sometimes it's good to have a specific Grafana dashboard just for a specific microservice if that microservice is doing very important thing for your system. So now I see that it's doing things, and I'm going to create an alert. So I'm going to say if it's bigger than 0.05, send me a message saying something. Okay, no orders contain errors or something like this. I'm going to save. I'm going to save this. I'm going to apply this. So now I see errors here, and now it's going to be fine in a few minutes. It's going to just need to pull some data. So this one, you can pause it, you can see it, you can see the service error alert. Okay, let me stop this frenzy here. Okay. So service error alert is okay for a few seconds, so it's fine. The alert is working for us. Now let's see what goodies I have here more. I have order tracing, and I can trace also the refund ratio. So how do I trace the refund ratio? Well, the refund ratio, I'm using this with the refund operation, and I can see this here. And I can also see this one working with the event rate over time because I have defined my own counter in event. So let me show you how I define my own counter in events. Okay, so here you can see I have defined my own counter. It's called event counter, and it's helping me to see how many times the an event ticket was bought, Besides that, I can also trace the duration if I want. So I can, for an event request with this a timed annotation of mine, which is so I can make another dashboard of mine to see how much it took to actually get a ticket for an event, which is again really useful for me. And of course, some of you might have noticed that sometimes in these logs here, I can see the visitor names. And for those of you that are worried about privacy, I have another advice. So I have created my own custom log interceptor. So whenever I need to hide information in logs, and sometimes you are thinking that, hey, but I'm not logging necessarily names of people or important information like their identification number or anything else that can help in identifying an user. I'm not logging that in logs specifically. Yes, you might not do that, but sometimes the stack traces of errors contain that, and you are not aware of that until that happens, So the best practices would be that for everything that you do, you should hide in your system logs to use a custom log interceptor and to replace that with some stars, with some dots, or whatever it is meaningful to you. Of course, we'll give you some more examples and a couple of advices in no meantime. So this is pretty much it about the system. Now it seems to work and everything's fine. Now let me get to the presentation. So the summary about all this would be that, well, my advice would be to install the tools that I use, for example, via operators. The reason being is that operators help you with deployment and maintenance of those tools. Most of those tools have stateful sets, and I'm not talking for the Kubernetes folks, have stateful sets or are objects that are not that easily maintained manually, and operators make an easier life for you to maintain those kind of objects. Now you can add some extra Prometheus alerts also with the help of your Kubernetes colleagues to specialize in Kubernetes to put more alerts in Prometheus. If you like to put alerts in Prometheus, I'm doing those as well, so I've done it for my setup as well. But I wanted to showcase more of the Grafana alerts today. You can use a service monitor to propagate your metrics to Prometheus. Again, in my setup.yaml, I see here that I defined the service to access the application. And this service has a port called HTTP traffic. My service, the service monitor is actually binding to that service and is listening on a specific path. And based on this service monitor is telling Prometheus where the metrics are there, including your Jaeger metrics. So this is how I was able to pull Jaeger metrics in my application. Now let me get back to the presentation. You should measure, by the way, you should attach relevant tags to endpoints that you trace. And you saw that I attached relevant tags for the endpoints that I trace. You should trace functions that contain critical business operations. You saw that I added another span in a service. It's not necessarily an endpoint. It was a service, but it was handling some business operations. So I attached, again, a span there so I can trace the critical business happening there. Also, you should correlate your application logs with tags defined on spans. So you shouldn't log inside the tags. That's one thing. That's the thing that you should never do. Do not log inside span tags. You should know that a certain span tag, it must probably have some logging information or useful logging information for you. So because you saw there are places where you can look into logs, and there are places where you should look for the traces and what's happened between the microservices. You should anonymize the data, the sensitive data, so that you do not catch that in logs. So be aware, in Europe, is this thing called GDPR, and is really, really important for end users to know that their information is safely stored, and they know where their information is being stored. Last but not least, make your own Grafana dashboards, because you define your own metrics for your application. Your application is unique, and you should make your own Grafana dashboards for those microservices. And of course, you should observe your critical business operations via custom Grafana alerts. As you saw in my case, I created my own custom Grafana alert so that I don't end up again in the situation that you saw earlier, like, happening again, to reach that test flag and to be notified before, seeing something is wrong when I'm issuing some requests. That was it from my side. I would like to thank you for listening to me. You can find the code at this GitHub account. And of course, I would like to invite you to join the space chat and to ask me further things about application monitoring, further questions that you have, things that were not so clear in my presentation. Of course, give me feedback. And I am really, really looking forward to connect with you and to talk to you. See you there. Bye.